Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. Trump indictment. Trump was indicted again today in Miami. It's historical stuff, and it's also asinine, but let's move on. Trump indictment turns 2024 election upside down, but not the way Democrats hope. Biden's Democrats may have overplayed their hand. They overplayed their hand a long time ago. They overplayed their hand in 2020. This is, I'll call one of the most historic games of chicken I have ever seen in my entire life. Let's read on. Joe Biden is desperate to run against Donald Trump in 2024. His campaign team imagines that the current president is likely to beat the former president as he did in 2020. The corollary is that they're not at all convinced he could win over anybody else. Hence, the indictment of Donald Trump on charges of mishandling classified information, which inevitably refused Trump's grievance agenda, raising money for his campaign, and appears to have further solidified his standing as frontrunner in the crowded GOP primary. The charges are meant to make his nomination inevitable, but weaken his appeal in the general election. That seems to be the strategy. They think they can beat Donald Trump, President Trump. They're not so sure on any other Democrat, or excuse me, Republican. It's very interesting. They want to pick and choose. This reminds me very much, those of you that are old enough, the Watergate days in the early 1970s, where Watergate was all about the cover-up of the rat blanking they used to do and some of the other things that made the Democrats look bad, manipulated candidates. They basically picked the Democrat nominee. They basically did it. That's what they did, very much like they're doing here, but the roles reversed this time. It was Republicans back in the early 70s. They're doing what the Democrats are doing now. The only difference is they're not using the DOJ to put up, no pun intended, trumped up charges against a former president and a candidate. Hence the indictment of Donald Trump on charges of mishandling classified information, which inevitably fuels Trump's grievance agenda. Now, I've seen a lot of, you go back, I watched Viva Fry. He had Barnes on there. He's a lawyer who explained the situation and the way the Constitution reads very, very well. Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president extraordinary powers. And I'm not so sure that there even is a case here. Now, I will say one thing. Having it in Miami is way better than having it in Washington, D.C., even though the indictment came out of Washington, D.C., which I find amazing to me. Probably they couldn't find anywhere else they would get an indictment except for a major city, i.e. Manhattan or Washington, D.C. It's, this whole thing stinks. It's unbelievable that this is actually even happening. And I'm a Trump supporter, but even if I wasn't a Trump supporter, I followed politics and government my whole life. I love American history, and this is just, it's something that it seems so surreal, but yet it isn't. Biden's apparatchiks have overplayed their hand. Oh, extraordinary overplayed their hand because they don't know what else to do. According to a CBS poll taken between the 7th and 10th of June, half the country thinks Trump's indictment was politically motivated. The responses are partisan, with 69% of Republicans judging the charges political and only 8% of Democrats. You say, well, that's a Democrat cult. Yeah, there's some cult members on the right as well, but not nearly as much. Not nearly as much. But a polarity of the independents, the fastest growing and now largest political group in the country, side with the GOP respondents in this matter. Eventually would be voting in a primary. 37% of those polled said they would participate in a Democrat primary, while 39 indicated they would vote in a GOP contest. Remember, there are estimated 10 million more registered Democrats than Republicans in the U.S. Now, the thing about being independent, not belonging to affiliation to any political party, in many states, I live in upstate New York. Unfortunately, I'm in New York State. They have what they call closed primaries. So a person that's not a registered Republican cannot vote in the upcoming primaries for president or any other office. Some states have open primaries. New York is not one of them. So we're going to see how that works out as far as the independents go. It's a mess. But Trump likes mess. It's the damnedest thing. He seems to thrive on it. It's a very unique situation. Moreover, this CBS survey reveals POTUS approval rating dropping to one of its lowest points to date, with only 41% of respondents giving the president a thumbs up and a whopping 59% turning thumbs down. I don't see how 41% of people can give approval of Biden in the last 2 years. I just don't see it. I mean, what's wrong with these people? It's funny. Talk to anybody that's a Biden supporter. Say to them, without mentioning Trump once, or even implying Trump, show me the things that Biden has done to help the American people in the last 2 years. And you'll get a lot of hemming and hawing and, well, Trump, no, don't mention Trump. It's very difficult for them to specifically, concretely defend Joe Biden. But yet at the same time, they would vote for him again if the opponent was Donald Trump. And that's the Democrats' strategy. I think it's going to backfire on them spectacularly. More bad news. More than 2/3 of those polls say Joe Biden should not be running for a second term, with a solid majority blaming his performance in the Oval Office for their decision. It's, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, or at least what the Democrats want to happen. They're not going to have, Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee next year for the Democrat Party for president. There's an internal battle going on. The Democrats don't want Kamala Harris either. I mean, they've painted themselves into a corner. They went all out with things done during COVID. Can't go into election stuff because this website won't allow it, but they did everything they could and pulled out all the stops. And Joe Biden now sits in the Oval Office. But they had to make a deal with Kamala Harris. They had to swing so far left that nobody even recognizes the Democrat Party anymore. So the old school, especially baby boomers like myself, I'll be 67 this November. The old school Democrat baby boomers, the union baby boomers, they're the foundation for the Democrat Party. And they see the Democrat Party as the Democrat Party of old. I used to be a local elected official in upstate New York in the early 2000s. I left the party over a decade ago and now Republican. It's not the party of my father, my grandfather, or even myself when I was an elected official here upstate. That party doesn't exist anymore. I've talked to several former colleagues on city council I was on here in upstate New York in the last few months, Democrat colleagues, when I was a Democrat, and they've changed. They're bitter, they're angry, they look down on people. People that are just salt of the earth, everyday people that work, go to church, try to raise their families. They look down on them now with contempt. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. I'm hoping that underlying attitude with most progressives and leftists drives the baby boomers that are left still believing in the old Democrat Party to really, really take a good hard look in the mirror and say, my party doesn't exist anymore. What do I do? Almost 2/3 rate the economy is bad, and 64% disapprove of Biden's handling of it despite the low unemployment rate. Well, that unemployment rate is a misnomer. They're not counting the millions that have stopped looking for work. So when they say low unemployment rate, what you need to do is go through, and it's difficult to look up, the amount of individuals employed right now in the United States. And then look at the amount of individuals employed in 2019. You have to go back before pre-COVID numbers to see. And there are millions more working in 2019 than there are now, even though the unemployment rate is extremely low. It doesn't count if those individuals start looking for work. What's happened to them? How they're making a living? That's a hell of a question. I wish I knew the answer. And people smarter than I are trying to figure it out. But Biden is not a normal incumbent. He won the election in 2020 because COVID wrecked an booming economy and because his handlers cleverly concealed from the public the extent of Biden's age-related incapacity. He also won because voters were tired of the endless dramas of the Trump presidency and longed for what Biden promised, a dialing down of the harsh political rhetoric and greater harmony. Well, he lied. How many times have you heard and seen evil mega Republicans? Not the Republicans, the evil mega Republicans, the evil mega Republicans, the white supremacists. It's all nonsense, absolute nonsense. Democrats are losing their grip on minorities, especially African Americans. Now, they still have a high percent that vote Democrat, but those numbers are being eaten away. And they've especially lost huge percentages among Hispanic Americans in the United States. It's Florida, all through the South, Texas, even some of the northern states. You have to understand something. The Hispanics are a very diverse community. Hispanics from Puerto Rico don't have the same political outlook as Hispanics that are first or second generation Cubans or Venezuelans. Very, very diverse. But as far as the Hispanics coming from dictatorships in really, really difficult countries to live in, they're starting to come around to the Republican way. And that's why I think that's the strategy of the Democrats, is the 15 to 20 million right now we have unlawful people living in the United States. That's why they want mass amnesty. That's put 10 plus million new voters. And historically, immigrants vote Democrat in very high percentages. That's the only way that I can see the Democrats saving their party from absolute disaster. Biden's not delivered on that promise of harmony. And his 2024 campaign strategy depends on furthering our divides. That's the damnedest thing. You would think most candidates would want to bring people together. Everything wrong with the nation, according to Biden, is the fault of his predecessor and the mega Republicans. At every opportunity, Biden blasts the mega GOP, hoping that the voters will tie Republican candidates, especially Trump, to the disgraceful events of January 6th. Boy, have Democrats mined January 6th. Boy, they milked that for all it's worth. But perhaps the most devastating reveal of the CBS News poll for Biden re-election prospects is the Republicans turn out to be quite moderate after all. Asked to list their top three criteria for 2024 Republican nominee, voters likely to participate in GOP primaries prioritized having a plan to lower inflation. Stop spending so much money. You pump trillions into an economy, it's going to cause inflation. Any first-year economics student, junior high school student used to know these kind of things. Plan to lower taxes, 78%. Be a role model for children, 65%. In addition, a sizable majority of Republicans, 69%, want their candidate to work with Democrats and do not want Trump to harp on the 2020 election, 68%. I agree. Here's the thing. We'll say Trump is 100% right of what he's saying would happen in 2020. I'm not saying that he is, because this website won't allow any slandering of the 2020 election cycle. But it's not in President Trump's best interest to keep talking about it. If he wants his revenge on the people that he feels screwed him over, he's best just to keep quiet about the election results of 2020, do what he can to win, and then, once he's sitting back in the Oval Office, it has the DOJ to weed out the bad actors and all these alphabet soup departments, especially the Department of Justice, which is the FBI and the CIA, let me go through the list, appoint a real attorney general that is really going to go after the bad actors in our government, faceless, nameless bureaucrats that are really running the country now instead of the officially elected people. Instead, almost all want to hear about what he plans to do about solving the country's problems. Trump had, on his Truth Social, had many, many videos on different topics: immigration, inflation, national security, economy, you name it. And they were very well made. They were very well made and very well done. And Trump's numbers still increase. And Biden's go down. We're going to have to see what happens. This doesn't seem crazy. Further, 80% of GOP primary voters do not want either reward or punishment for businesses for supporting LGBTQ causes. I'm not so sure about that. It depends on how far in they're supporting. I mean, there's putting something on your webpage as we don't discriminate against anybody for LGBT issues. And then there's doing the things like Nike and Bud Light and all that are doing, and Disney. That's a whole different gig. I think that's confusing. What happened was nobody really cared about LGBTQ issues. Nobody really did. Let people live their lives. The GOP has always been more open-minded about letting people live their lives, do what they want to do. This is a free country. If that's the way they want to live, fine. But when they brought in children into the mix, especially when they were being exposed for their agenda through COVID, when students were remotely going to school, parents got to see what was really being said and done. And that opened up the floodgates. And the FBI went after parents at school board meetings, which just increased the floodgates. And then, of course, the progressive, the leftists do what they always do. They go too far, way too far. And now a can of worms has been opened. The genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, and they can't put it back in. That's what I think is going to be their downfall. Similarly, 50% do not advocate micromanaging school teachings on racial issues. I'm not so sure about that. It depends how you do it, but that's another argument for another day. This after Joe Biden has repeatedly slammed Republicans for supposedly callous and cruel targeting of transsexual kids and hyperventilating continually about the GOP's racist agenda. It is a lie. Yeah, it is. GOP is not racist. My God, if anything, the progressive Democrats are the major racists in this country. Yes, Republicans want to spur economic growth by cutting taxes, and they want their candidate to articulate a plan for reducing inflation, which has caused real incomes in the U.S. to decline for 25 straight months. That's over 2 years. Now, you're saying, well, John, we've been spoiled. The rest of the world doesn't do as well as us, so it's about time we put up with the same pain they do. No. We have the best system by far, economic, government-wise, you name it. We are isolated from European conflicts. We have more than enough resources. We were energy independent. All those things are now gone. They can be brought back fairly easily. Those ambitions top culture war issues that Democrats have focused on. Note to Democrats, when Americans tell pollsters that Joe Biden does not care about people like me, they should pay attention. Including a former president who is also your most likely a political opponent in an upcoming race is risky, especially when Joe Biden is being investigated for taking and storing privileged information. And when Hillary Clinton received a mere rebuke from FBI Chief James Comey for similarly careless handling of secrets and also failing to comply with a subpoena, Americans might be more ready to condemn Trump for his missteps had Special Counsel John Durham in his Russiagate report not shown Democrats that their FBI ally is guilty of bending the law to undermine Trump. Getting rid of Donald Trump is not about a Democrat thing. Let's make this perfectly clear. This is about the deep state and the bureaucrats in the federal government trying to save their own asses. The bad actors in the FBI and the DOJ and other government agencies military that have done horrendous things, and they're afraid of being caught and exposed. Donald Trump will lay waste to those people when he wins again, if and when he wins again. We'll have to see, but they're looking over their shoulder, and it's something they have never done before. The anxiety in the Biden camp is running high, fueled by the Real Clear Politics average of polls showing that the president running behind Trump. President Biden is in trouble because of this time around, he has a record to run on, and it's not good. Yeah, unfortunately, COVID intervened, and Trump would have won. I could almost bet my life on it if I went back in time and it could change things and had COVID not happened. But it happened the way it happened. It was just bad luck on Trump and the Republicans' part. We're going to have to see, because you got to remember something. Republicans talk a good game when it comes after going after bad actors in the Democrat Party. But they lack the backbone, the balls to do it. We're going to have to see. What else made the 24 selection all about Trump? But in the upcoming contest, voters will weigh the age-old Reagan question. And I remember this distinctly. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? The answer is no. While many Democrats will say the answer is no, but we're still going to vote for Biden or anybody they put in anyway. It's unbelievable how people are dug in. I mean dug in where they're unchangeable. It's that 10% in the middle that's going to sway everything in the direction this country is going in. It's just amazing to me what's happened. I feel sometimes I'm so saddened and disappointed that this is like a bad movie. This isn't about Trump. This is about the cancer that's been growing and growing and growing in federal and state governments for decades that has finally come to a head. This is about the future of this country and which road we're going to turn, like the old Robert Frost poem. Which road are we going to take? Do I wish it was a better candidate? When I say candidate, I mean person than Donald Trump, even though I'm a huge Trump supporter? Yeah. But Donald Trump is the only personality trait. He's the only one balls enough to just plow through like a bull in a china shop through this bureaucracy that has taken over and is now running the country. The corporate bureaucracy merger is unbelievable through social media, corporations, and the government employees at large. It's incredible what's happened. It's Mussolini's definition of fascism. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. And I wish I had not seen it in my lifetime, but sadly it's happened. Vote for who you think is best for the country, as I always say. But the fact of the matter is, if you do not vote for Donald Trump in a primary or in the general election next year, if he's the nominee, and he should be, you are rewarding the anti-constitutional people in the government. You're rewarding social media for lying and keeping facts from you, and you're rewarding cable news organizations for lying and keeping facts from you. And if they're rewarded for their lies, they're going to do it again, if not worse, the next time. Voting for Donald Trump is a vote for free speech, free assembly, all those things that the founders and the Democrats used to believe in. Keep that in mind. Just because Donald Trump is flawed does not mean what I just said isn't true. Until the next time, goodbye and good luck.